Before you dive into this gripping tale of past regrets and second chances, hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and tell us in the comments, what's one past mistake you wish you could go back and fix? The billionaire's ghost of the past. Ethan Blackwood had it all. 9 figures in the bank, a rock-solid family business, and a fiancée gracing magazine covers. His dream wedding was just 2 months away when he stepped into that meeting room, and his world collapsed like a poorly constructed building. Olivia Hayes was no longer the struggling art student he'd abandoned 8 years ago. Now, she was the country's most prestigious architect, elegant, prosperous, and a mother to 8-year-old twins. Between buried secrets, calculated revenge, and a love that defied time, Ethan would discover that some truths are more devastating than any lie, and that winning back the only woman he ever truly loved might cost him everything he had built. The gilded elevator ascended slowly through the floors of the corporate building, reflecting the diffused morning light of bustling London through its tinted glass. Ethan Blackwood adjusted his Italian silk tie for the 3rd time in 5 minutes, a nervous habit he'd developed over recent months. At 32, he had everything a man could desire: a 9-figure net worth, a family business as solid as reinforced concrete, and a fiancée who appeared on magazine covers. Yet there was an emptiness in his chest, like an echo in a vacant apartment. That morning's meeting was crucial. Blackwood & Sons Engineering was about to embark on its most ambitious social project yet, an educational complex in a low-income borough, set to serve over 2,000 underprivileged children. The government insisted they partner with the nation's top architect, specializing in humanitarian projects, Olivia Hayes. Her name had appeared in the report as a unanimous recommendation. Ethan read it 3 times before his stomach clenched. It couldn't be the same person, not after so long. But there he was, walking down the marble corridor towards the conference room, each step echoing like a countdown. He paused in front of the frosted glass door, took a deep breath, and pushed the handle. She stood with her back to him, leaning over a wide table where architectural blueprints spread like maps of dreams. She wore an impeccable beige suit, her straight brown hair falling in a perfect line to her shoulders, her feet clad in heels that made her seem taller than he remembered. She was no longer the slender teenager in faded jeans. This woman exuded a natural elegance, earned inch by painstaking inch. Architect Hayes? Ethan heard his own voice as if from far away. She turned slowly, as if she already knew who she would find. And when their eyes met, time didn't just stop. It collapsed like a poorly structured building. Olivia had matured astonishingly. The face he had known as young and anxious now held a quiet serenity. Her brown eyes were deeper, marked by tears he hadn't wiped away and victories he hadn't witnessed. There was a strength there, a dignity that left him breathless. "Ethan Blackwood," she said, her voice carrying the same cadence as always, but a deeper, more confident tone. "It's been a while." There was no surprise in her expression, no anger, only a professional neutrality that cut deeper than any scream. "Olivia, He choked on the words he had rehearsed in the elevator. "I didn't know you would be the project architect. Now you do." She turned her attention back to the blueprints. "We can begin." The meeting proceeded with painful formality. Olivia presented her portfolio with the precision of someone who had built every achievement brick by brick. She spoke of inclusive spaces, of architecture that embraced communities, of dreams transformed into concrete and steel. Ethan listened, mesmerized, not only by her competence, but by the passion that still glowed in her eyes when she spoke of building a better world. "The educational complex will have 3 main pavilions," Olivia explained, pointing to the drawings with a silver pen. "Each adapted for different age groups, but connected by a central plaza that will function as the social heart of the community. Here, children won't just study, they'll develop holistically. How long will it take to be ready? Ethan asked, trying to sound professional while watching her delicate hands glide over the paper. 18 months if there are no external interferences. Her eyes met his, as long as everyone involved keeps their word. The insinuation was subtle, but sharp. Ethan felt a blush creep up his neck. The presentation had just finished when the conference room door suddenly swung open. 2 identical children burst into the room like small hurricanes of pure energy, wearing toy yellow hard hats and carrying sheets full of colorful drawings. "Mommy! Mommy!" they cried in unison, running towards Olivia. Ethan felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. 2 children, approximately 7 years old, fair-skinned, with light brown hair and eyes that sparkled with precocious intelligence. They were identical not only to each other, but bore features he recognized in his own mirror. "James, Thomas," Olivia said, opening her arms to receive them. "You're early today." "We finished the aquatic school drawing," one of them said, holding out a sheet where colorful fish swam among submerged desks. "And I made one with a water slide that goes straight to the library," the other added, his eyes shining with pride. Olivia smiled for the first time since Ethan had entered the room, and he felt his heart break at the sight of the genuine tenderness on her face. "These are my sons, James and Thomas," she said, her voice softening completely. "Boys, say hello to Mr. Blackwood." The twins turned to Ethan with the natural curiosity of children. He knelt to their level, his legs trembling. "Hello," James said, studying Ethan's face intently. "Do you build houses too?" "Yes, I build," Ethan replied, his voice hoarse. "Do you like drawing buildings?" "We love it!" Thomas exclaimed. "Mommy teaches us how to make real blueprints. Look!" The boy held out another drawing, more elaborate than typical childish scribbles. It was a simple house project, but with correct proportions and even measurement indications. "Wow," Ethan murmured, genuinely impressed. "You're very talented." "Daddy was an architect too," James said, with the naturalness with which children speak of profound matters. "He died when we were little, but Mommy says he's always watching our drawings." The silence that followed was thick like a storm cloud. Ethan looked up at Olivia, who had tensed slightly. "Boys, go to the drawing room," she said softly. "I'm almost done here." "Okay, Mommy." Thomas waved goodbye to Ethan. "Bye, Uncle. You seem cool." When the children left, the silence again weighed on the 2 adults like a concrete slab. Ethan couldn't get the children's apparent age out of his mind, the features that seemed familiar to him, the dates that aligned perfectly in his head. "How old are they?" he asked, trying to sound casual. 8, Olivia replied, gathering the blueprints from the table with precise movements. They were born in March 2017. Ethan did the calculations automatically. March 2000. They had broken up in June 2000. The timeline fit perfectly, like pieces of a puzzle he didn't want to assemble. "Olivia, I need to ask you something." "No." The answer was quick, definitive. "You don't need to ask anything. The meeting is over. You'll have my response on the project in 48 hours. She turned towards the door, but Ethan stepped forward, partially blocking her path. "Please, 5 minutes." Olivia paused, but didn't turn to look straight at him. She stood there, in profile, her chin held high in a posture he remembered well. "You disappeared," Ethan said, his voice low but intense. "One day you were there, at the construction site, showing your drawings, talking about the projects you wanted to do. The next day you were gone. You didn't answer calls, you changed your address. You discarded me." Olivia finally turned, and there was a coldness in her eyes he had never seen. "No, Ethan, not with words, but with silences. with embarrassed looks when your friends appeared, with cheap excuses to cancel dates. I got the message. My father, your father didn't break up with me. You did. She took a deep breath. And when it was time to choose, you chose his approval instead of fighting for me. The truth fell between them like a hammer on glass. Ethan closed his eyes, reliving the cowardice that had haunted him for years. I was young. I was afraid of… what? Of being disinherited? Olivia laughed, but there was no humor there. I was afraid of not having money for the bus fare on Monday, afraid of not being able to finish university, afraid that my dreams were too small for your world. But I would have faced anything for you. Anything. And now? Ethan asked, his voice almost a whisper. Do you hate me? Olivia studied him for a long moment, as if evaluating a complex project. No, she finally said. Hate demands an energy I no longer have to waste. You are the past, Ethan. A chapter that has already been written, revised, and filed. And the children? What children? The question came loaded with an innocence that fooled no one. Olivia, they are David's sons, my children with my husband, who died in a construction accident on a poorly managed site, while trying to support the family we built together. Each word was uttered with surgical precision. Any other questions you have about my personal life will be irrelevant to this professional project. Ethan felt as if he had been punched in the stomach, not by the confirmation he sought, but by the raw pain in her voice when she mentioned her dead husband. I'm so sorry for your loss. Thank you. Olivia took the folder and turned back to the door. You'll receive my proposal before Thursday. Olivia, wait. She paused at the door, her hand on the handle. Don't look for me outside the professional context, Ethan. Don't try to rewrite our history. Some bridges, when they fall, should not be rebuilt. We must simply learn to cross the river in a different way. And she left, leaving behind only the subtle jasmine perfume he remembered from so long ago, now mixed with the more mature fragrance of a woman who had learned to live without him. Ethan slumped into one of the chairs, his head in his hands. For years, he had convinced himself that he had made the right decision, that he had saved Olivia from a world that wouldn't accept her, that he had been noble in giving up love to protect her from his family's cruelty. But the truth was there, as clear as the building's glass. He had been a coward, and she, the girl he judged too fragile for his world, had built an empire of her own, while he was content to inherit others. His cell phone vibrated, a message from Victoria, his fiancée. Love, don't forget we have dinner with the Millers tonight. Should I wear the blue dress or the gold one? Ethan looked at the screen without really seeing the words. Victoria Hayes, 28 years old, 2 million followers on Instagram, a marketing graduate, but working as a digital influencer. Beautiful, ambitious, and perfectly suited to his family's standards. Everything Olivia hadn't been, and everything in which she revealed herself to be infinitely superior. From outside, London buzzed in its eternal dance of cars, people, and dreams. But there, in that silent room, Ethan Blackwood faced for the first time the real weight of his choices, and he wondered if there was still time to build bridges over rivers he himself had widened. In the next rooms, the sound of children's laughter echoed, James and Thomas playing while they waited for their mother to finish gathering her materials. The sound pierced the walls like an old melody, awakening in Ethan a nostalgia for something he had never had. A family built on love, not convenience. He stayed there until the sounds faded, until Olivia's and the children's footsteps disappeared down the corridor. Only then did he get up, straighten his tie once more, and prepare to return to his life as the perfect heir. But something had irrevocably changed that morning. A foundation had been shaken. and Ethan knew that nothing would be solid again until he found a way to rebuild what he had destroyed with his own cowardly hands. What do you think Ethan will do now that he's confronted the truth about Olivia and his past? Will he be able to escape the life he's built? Let us know your predictions in the comments. 3 weeks after their first encounter, Ethan was obsessed. He had hired a discreet investigator to uncover details about Olivia's life, but the information only increased his doubts. David Miller had died in September 2019, when the children were 2 years old. But there were no clear medical records of the twins' exact birth date, only the official certificate indicating March 2017. The math wouldn't leave his head. They had broken up in June 2016, and the children were born in March 2017. 9 months. The count closed perfectly, like a flawless architectural project. Sitting in his panoramic office, Ethan watched the city move below, while leafing through the investigator's report for the 10th time. Olivia had accepted the educational complex project, but insisted on exclusively professional communication. All meetings were formal, with teams present, leaving no room for personal conversations. His cell phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. Victoria. "Love, where's your head been lately?" Her voice sounded impatient on the other end of the line. "Yesterday you barely listened to me talking about the wedding venue, and today you canceled lunch with my mother. Sorry, V, the social project is taking more time than I imagined." "Social project?" She laughed, but there was an acidic note there. "Since when are you so interested in charity? It's important for the company's image." Victoria paused, a loaded silence. "I heard the architect is a certain Olivia Hayes. They say she's very pretty." Ethan felt his stomach clench. "She's a competent professional, I'm sure." The irony in her voice was palpable. "Well, I hope you don't get carried away by her competence. Our wedding is in 4 months, darling." After hanging up, Ethan felt restless. Victoria had always been possessive, but lately her distrust was intensifying, and he couldn't deny she had reasons. The opportunity to get closer to the children arose unexpectedly. During a visit to the construction site the following week, Olivia received an urgent call. An important client needed an immediate meeting, but she couldn't leave the children alone in the office. "I can watch them," Ethan offered, trying to sound casual. "There's a park nearby. We can go for a walk while you sort out your problem." Olivia hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the idea. "Please, Mommy." Thomas tugged at her skirt. "We want to see real excavators, and Uncle Ethan promised to show us how a cement mixer works," James added, his eyes sparkling with anticipation. "I promise that." Ethan smiled genuinely for the first time in weeks. "You said you were going to show us how tall buildings are built," Thomas insisted. Olivia looked at Ethan with an inscrutable expression, then at her eager sons. 2 hours, no more. And so, for the first time in 8 years, Ethan found himself responsible for 2 children who might be his own. The feeling was simultaneously terrifying and wonderful. The twins were pure, concentrated energy. They ran around the construction site asking a million questions. They touched everything that was allowed, and some things that weren't. And they filled their pockets with special pebbles they intended to take home. "Uncle Ethan, why don't you have kids?" James asked very directly, as they watched a crane lift concrete beams. The question hit Ethan like a hammer. "I never found the right person to have children with." "But you're cool," Thomas said, taking his hand naturally. "You explain things just like Daddy used to. Do you remember your father?" "A little bit." James made a concentrated face. "He was tall and had curly hair. Mommy says he liked to draw houses in the sand at the beach, and he made funny voices when he read stories," Thomas added. "Mommy still does them sometimes, but she gets sad afterward." Ethan felt his chest tighten, imagining Olivia alone, trying to be both father and mother, bearing the pain of loss while raising these extraordinary children. He must have been a very special man. He was, the two replied in unison. But you're special too, Uncle Ethan. James looked at him seriously. Mommy gets less serious when you're around. She gets serious with me, not angry serious, Thomas explained with the patience of someone teaching an obvious concept to an adult. Serious like worried, just like when she has important meetings. Ethan wondered what the children perceived that adults tried to hide. There was a natural intuition in children, a capacity to read emotions that left him both uncomfortable and fascinated. In the park, while the twins played on the slide, Ethan watched them with a growing pressure in his chest. Did they have his eyes? His face shape? The way James tilted his head when he thought seemed too familiar to be a coincidence. Uncle Ethan, can you push our swing? Thomas called from the other side of the park. Ethan spent the next hour pushing swings, helping with the seesaw, and listening to endless stories about their drawings, their favorite teachers, and their outlandish plans to build a treehouse that also functioned as a science lab. They're very intelligent, he said, genuinely impressed with the children's creativity. Mommy says we're like her, James smiled proudly. But sometimes she looks at our baby pictures and says, we have the face of someone she used to know. Ethan's heart leaped. She said that? Uh-huh. Thomas swung his legs on the swing. Once I asked her who, and she just went quiet, you know. Then she changed the subject. When Olivia arrived to pick them up, she found Ethan sitting on the grass with the two boys, all three building sandcastles with twigs and leaves. The scene was so natural, so familiar, that she had to force herself to maintain a neutral expression. How were they? She asked, her voice colder than she intended. Perfect, Ethan replied, getting up and dusting off his pants. They're extraordinary children, Olivia. Mommy, can I play with Uncle Ethan again? James ran to hug her legs. We had so much fun, Thomas added. He knows all about cranes. Olivia looked at Ethan over her sons' heads, and for the first time since their reunion, he saw a crack in her emotional armor. Thank you for watching them. It was a pleasure, and he was telling the absolute truth. If you need again, it won't be necessary. But 3 days later, she called. She had an office emergency. A pipe had burst, and she needed to be there to supervise the repairs, but the nanny hadn't shown up. This time, Ethan took the children to his penthouse. They were ecstatic with the panoramic city view, running from window to window, identifying the buildings they knew. Wow, you live in the sky, Thomas exclaimed, pressing his face against the glass. Almost, Ethan chuckled. Want to see the terrace? On the garden terrace, the twins discovered the small vegetable patch Ethan maintained more for therapy than necessity. They spent a whole hour planting basil seedlings, making a monumental mess, and soaking each other with the hose. Uncle Ethan, are you rich? James asked, with the typical frankness of children. Why do you want to know that? Because our old house was small, and our new one is big. Mommy says we work hard to have good things. And you have a lot of good things, Thomas observed, pointing to the infinity pool. So you must work hard. I do work hard, but having many things isn't the most important. What is the most important then? Ethan looked at the two faces, dirty with earth, hair disheveled by the wind, sincere smiles, and felt something stir in his chest, something he had locked away long ago. Having special people to share those things with. You don't have special people? James asked, genuinely concerned. I have a fiancé. Is fiancé the same as wife? Thomas interrupted. More or less. We're getting married in a few months. Is she as cool as Mommy? The question caught Ethan off guard. He tried to imagine Victoria there, playing in the dirt, soaked with water, laughing with two mischievous children. The image simply didn't form. She's different from your mother. Different how? More. She's worried about looking pretty. He searched for words the children would understand. Oh, James seemed to understand immediately. Just like Aunt Emily, Mommy's sister. She takes 3 hours to get ready just to go to the market. And you can't touch her after she's ready, Thomas added. Otherwise she gets mad. Ethan chuckled, recognizing the description. But the laughter died when he realized he was comparing his fiancée to an ant the children clearly considered boring. When Olivia arrived to pick them up at the end of the afternoon, she found all three asleep on the living room sofa, Ethan in the middle, with a child curled up in each arm, all exhausted after an afternoon of games. She stood at the doorway for a long moment, observing the scene. There was something disturbingly natural there, as if those bodies knew exactly where they should be. Olivia? Ethan woke first, blinking in confusion. Sorry for the delay. She approached to gently wake her sons. The damage was worse than I imagined. No problem. They were angels. When the children woke up, there was the usual ritual of protests about having to leave, promises to be good if they could stay a little longer, and tight hugs for Ethan. Thank you, Olivia said, when they were finally at the door. Again, Olivia. Ethan hesitated. Then he decided to risk it. Can I ask you a question? She tensed immediately. Depends on the question. The children. When you were pregnant. He took a deep breath. Was David present from the beginning? The silence that followed was thick as fresh concrete. Olivia looked at him with an expression he couldn't decipher. Why do you want to know that? Because I look at them and... He stopped, unsure how to express the certainty growing in his chest. And what, Ethan? Could they be my sons? The question came out as an urgent whisper. Olivia stood very still for a moment that seemed eternal. When she finally spoke, her voice was low but firm. No, Ethan. They are not your children. They are David's children, conceived in our marriage, loved and desired from day one. Any other question you have about my personal life will be irrelevant to this professional project. But the date of what? She turned to face him fully. Do you think I would lie about something like that? That I would hide it from you if they were your children? I don't know what to think. Then stop thinking. Olivia took the children's hands. And stop investigating my life. Yes, I know you hired a detective. Stop doing it, Ethan. Stop looking for connections that don't exist just because you feel guilty about the past. She went down with the children in the elevator, leaving Ethan alone in the lobby of his penthouse with more doubts than certainties. But there was something in the way she had spoken, an urgency in her denial that didn't match her usual naturalness. That night, Ethan had dinner with Victoria at an expensive restaurant in Notting Hill. She spoke animatedly about the wedding preparations, the dresses she had tried on, the flowers she had chosen. But he barely listened, lost in thoughts of two bright-eyed children who called him uncle, and made his heart ache with nostalgia for something he might never have had. Ethan! Victoria's voice cut through his reverie. You didn't hear a word I said, did you? Sorry, love, I'm preoccupied with the project. That damn project again. She put her fork down on the table harder than necessary. You know what? I think I'm going to meet that architect personally to understand what's distracting my fiancé so much. Something in her tone made Ethan look up, alarmed. It's not necessary, V. It's just work. Oh, really? She smiled, but there was ice in her eyes. Then you won't mind if I drop by tomorrow, just to meet the very competent professional who's demanding so much attention from my future husband. And at that moment, observing the cold smile of his fiancée, Ethan knew a storm was coming, and that Olivia, after everything she had already faced alone, was about to be attacked by an enemy she didn't even know existed. Do you believe Olivia's denial about the children's paternity, or is she hiding the truth from Ethan? How will Olivia face Victoria's impending attack? Share your predictions. The storm arrived on a Tuesday in March, exactly as Victoria had promised. Olivia was in her office, reviewing the final designs for the educational complex, when her secretary announced an unexpected visitor. Victoria Hayes swept into the room like a gust of perfumed wind and poorly disguised ambition. Impeccably curled blonde hair cascaded perfectly over bare shoulders, revealed by the daring neckline of a white dress that cost more than many people's monthly salary. Her nails were works of art in nude polish with gold accents, and the smile she displayed didn't reach her calculating blue eyes. "You must be the famous Olivia Hayes," she said, extending a perfectly manicured hand, diamond rings reflecting the natural light that streamed through the office's large windows. "I'm Victoria Hayes, Ethan's fiancée." Olivia rose slowly, each movement calculated to maintain a professional posture, despite the alarm that blared in her mind like a security system triggered by an intruder. "Pleased to meet you. How can I help you?" "Oh, I just wanted to meet the architect who's occupying so much of my future husband's time." Victoria walked around the room like a feline exploring new territory, her Louboutin heels echoing on the light wooden floor. She examined every detail with the eyes of a professional assessor. The suspended plants that created a vertical garden along the glass wall, the architectural models arranged like sculptures, the awards discreetly positioned on the shelves. What an interesting office, very alternative for my taste, but I imagine it has its charm. The condescending tone slipped from her words like poisoned honey, but Olivia merely smiled politely, keeping her hands clasped in front of her body, in a posture that demonstrated absolute control. "Thank you. Can I offer you coffee, Morotia?" "No, thank you. I don't usually consume caffeine after 10 in the morning. It's bad for the skin, you know." Victoria stopped in front of a shelf where some of Olivia's social project models were displayed, her fingers gliding almost disrespectfully over the handcrafted work. "And sugar, then? No way. I have a very expensive nutritionist who would kill me if I strayed from my diet." "I must admit I was curious about you. Ethan has been so involved with this social project. It's almost touching to see him discovering charity after so many years." "The project is important for the community," Olivia replied, maintaining a neutral tone, like a diplomat in hostile territory. "I'm sure it is." Victoria slowly turned, and there was something predatory in her smile, like a shark detecting blood in the water. "You know, it's funny. Ethan briefly mentioned that you knew each other from way back. What a small world, isn't it? London can seem small sometimes, especially in certain professional circles." Victoria approached the executive desk where framed photos of the twins were displayed, her eyes fixing on the images with an attention that went far beyond casual curiosity. "What absolutely beautiful children. Your children?" "Yes. How old are they?" "They seem so developed for their age. 8 years old." Victoria picked up one of the photos, Olivia's favorite, where James and Thomas were laughing in the park, with ice cream-smeared cheeks and eyes shining with pure joy, studying it with exaggerated attention like a detective looking for clues. "Interesting. They have familiar features." She looked up at Olivia, and there was malice there, a cruel satisfaction from someone about to strike a precise blow. "Especially the eyes, and the shape of their faces, don't you think?" The air in the room seemed to grow denser, as if a storm were brewing within the four walls. Olivia immediately understood what was happening, recognizing the tactic as one predator recognizes another. "I think you've said what you came to say, Miss Hayes." She walked towards the door with firm steps, opening it none too subtly. "I have a client meeting in 10 minutes. Of course. I wouldn't want to bother such a dedicated professional." Victoria placed the photo back in its spot, but her movements were deliberately slow, as if she were marking territory. "Just one more little thing, since we're talking woman to woman. Wouldn't you be interested to know that I have very influential contacts in the media?" In the world of architecture, too? Editors of specialized magazines, art critics, investigative journalists, people who love interesting stories about public figures. She paused dramatically, observing Olivia's face like a poker player looking for signs of weakness. It would be a real shame if questions arose about the integrity of some projects, or about the personal life of certain famous architects, especially those with such unique children. The silence that followed was laden with thinly veiled threat, heavy like a storm cloud about to burst. "Are you threatening me?" Olivia asked, her voice low but firm as reinforced concrete foundations. "I would never do such a thing," Victoria laughed, a sound as crystalline and false as synthetic glass. "I just observed that reputations are such fragile things, built over years, but they can crumble in a matter of days, with the right information reaching the right people. And it would be terrible if something harmed the career of a single mother, especially a mother with such interesting family secrets." Olivia felt anger rise like lava in a volcano, hot and destructive, but she maintained her composure with the self-control she had learned from years of fighting alone. She wouldn't give Victoria the satisfaction of seeing her upset. "I think it's best if you leave. Now, if you please." Victoria walked towards the door with calculatedly slow steps. Then she stopped at the threshold, turning with a smile that seemed carved from ice. "Oh, and Olivia, stay away from my fiancé. Some men have a tendency to get confused about the past, especially when certain influences reappear in their lives. It would be a shame if that confusion cost everyone involved dearly, including innocent children." And she left, leaving behind only the echo of her expensive perfume mixed with the poison of her words, and the feeling that a bomb had not only been armed, but also detonated. Olivia remained motionless for several minutes, her hands trembling slightly as she processed every word of the conversation. She wasn't naive. She had built her professional empire navigating turbulent waters, facing sexism, prejudice, and unfair competition. She knew exactly what Victoria had insinuated and what the ultimate goal was, but she had completely underestimated the extent of the calculating malice some people were capable of when they felt threatened. What she didn't expect was that Victoria had already begun to execute her plan long before that visit. The following Monday, Olivia received a call that chilled her to the bone. David Alcott, CEO of one of the country's largest real estate conglomerates and a longtime client, canceled a multi-million-pound project that had been in development for months. "Olivia, you know I have the utmost respect for your work." His voice sounded embarrassed on the phone. "But some issues have arisen that the board finds concerning. Nothing against you personally, of course, but we need to be cautious with our corporate image." "What kind of issues, David?" Olivia asked, though she already suspected the answer. "Rumors about irregularities in some projects. Nothing concrete yet, but you know how the market is. Perception is sometimes more important than reality." The same day, Sarah Bell, editor-in-chief of Architecture and Design magazine, called with equally disturbing news. "Olivia, I'm so sorry, but we're going to have to cancel the cover story that was scheduled for next month." Her voice sounded genuinely apologetic. "We received some information suggesting possible ethical problems in some of your past projects." "What information, Sarah? From what source?" "I can't reveal the source, you understand, but these are serious allegations. Plagiarism, appropriation of ideas from younger colleagues, that kind of thing. I need to investigate further before publishing anything." And on Friday, the straw that broke the camel's back. Olivia arrived at her office to find Robert, her partner and right-hand man, pale as paper, holding a brown envelope. "Olivia, this arrived early today," he said, his voice trembling. It's an official summons." Olivia tore open the envelope with hands that struggled not to shake. Inside was a legal notification. Someone had filed a formal complaint with the Royal Institute of British Architects, alleging blatant plagiarism in her most awarded project. The community center that had won the National Social Architecture Award 2 years prior. "This is absolutely ridiculous," Robert said, throwing other papers onto the table. "You developed every detail from scratch. I saw the whole process. Who on earth would make such an accusation?" Olivia knew exactly who would do it, and she also knew she would need all her strength to fight such a well-orchestrated campaign. But there was something more worrying in the complaint. Along with the allegations of plagiarism, there were insinuations about personal matters that could compromise the architect's professional judgment and undeclared conflicts of interest in recent projects. Victoria wasn't just attacking her career. She was preparing the ground to expose the secrets about James and Thomas. Meanwhile, across town, Ethan noticed subtle but disturbing changes in his fiancée's behavior. Victoria had been strangely animated in recent weeks, almost euphoric, humming around the apartment and talking about the wedding with an enthusiasm that seemed exaggerated, even by her usual standards. "Darling, I was thinking of doing a pre-wedding photo shoot in the Cotswolds," she commented. During dinner one Thursday, playing with her engagement ring. "It would be perfect for my Instagram. We can use my private jet. Stay a few days." "Victoria, you know I'm very involved with the social project now. It's not a good time to travel." "Oh yes, the social project." Her enthusiasm visibly dwindled, replaced by something he couldn't identify. "How's it going, by the way? Working well with the architect?" "Olivia is an exceptional professional. The project is developing very well." "How nice." Victoria smiled, but there was something forced there. "It must be interesting to work with someone from your past." Ethan looked up from his plate, surprised. "What do you mean?" "Oh, darling, London isn't that big. Everyone knows you two knew each other when you were young." She shrugged with feigned casualness. "Old friends reuniting for work. It's almost romantic, don't you think?" There was something in her tone that made Ethan feel uneasy, but he couldn't pinpoint exactly what. The truth came out one Thursday afternoon, when Ethan arrived home earlier due to a canceled meeting and overheard Victoria on the phone in her dressing room, her voice vibrating with malicious satisfaction. "Yes, darling, it went exactly as planned. The anonymous complaint has already had an effect, and clients are starting to cancel contracts." She laughed, a sound Ethan had never heard before, cold and cruel, like breaking glass. "That Olivia Hayes is going to learn not to meddle with what isn't hers, especially with my fiancé." Ethan stood frozen in the hallway, his blood freezing in his veins as he listened to his fiancé methodically orchestrating the destruction of an innocent woman's reputation. No, it's risky. I have friends in all the right places, editors, critics, professional board members, and even if she proves she's innocent, the suspicion will already be in people's minds. You know how the stain lingers, darling. Her reputation is tainted forever." A pause, and when she continued, her voice held an even more visceral satisfaction. "Oh, and I found out something very interesting about her children. It seems the dates don't quite add up. It's going to be fun when that leaks to the press." Ethan didn't wait to hear more. He left the house, his blood boiling with anger and disgust, driving towards Olivia's office like a man possessed by his own remorse, and by a desperate need to fix what his cowardice had broken once more. The commercial building was almost empty when he arrived. It was past 9 at night. He found Olivia alone in her office, the golden light of the desk lamp creating a warm aura around her figure, hunched over a table covered with documents, evidence, original blueprints, and desperate notes to prove her innocence. She looked up when he entered, and he saw an exhaustion that went far beyond the physical. It was the weariness of someone who had fought alone their whole life, and now faced a battle that seemed impossible to win. "Ethan?" Her voice sounded hoarse, probably from hours spent on the phone with lawyers and clients. "What are you doing here at this hour?" "I know what Victoria did," he said bluntly, closing the door behind him. "I heard her on the phone today, and I'm going to fix this, Olivia. I'm going to fix everything." Olivia studied him for a moment that seemed eternal, her eyes scrutinizing his face as if trying to determine if she could trust the man who had already disappointed her before, once more. Then she returned to the documents scattered across the table. "It's not necessary. I can handle it alone." "Alone as always, right?" Ethan approached, running his fingers through his hair in frustration. "Alone against the world, proving once again that you're strong enough to face anything they throw at you." "Because I am strong enough," she replied, her voice firm but tired. "I know you are." He pulled up a chair and sat in front of her desk, forcing her to look at him. "You always were, much stronger than I ever was. But this time, you don't have to be alone, Olivia. This time, I'm going to be by your side." Olivia stopped writing and looked directly at him, and he saw not only exhaustion, but a deep pain that went far beyond the current situation. "Why, Ethan? Why do you want to help me now? Why do you want to be by my side now?" "Because 8 years ago, I was a miserable coward. Because I let my pathetic fear be greater than my love for you. Because I abandoned the only woman who ever made me want to be a better version of myself." Ethan took a deep breath, the words coming out like confessions torn from his chest. "And because over these past few weeks, spending time with you and the children, I remembered who I truly want to be. I remembered the person I was when I was with you." "Olivia, I know James and Thomas aren't my biological children," he interrupted softly, taking her hands across the table. "You made it clear, and I believe you. But when I'm with them, when I see the way they laugh, how they draw, how they look at me with those eyes full of trust, I feel like they're mine. And when I'm with you, when I see the incredible woman you've become, the extraordinary mother you are, I feel like I'm home for the first time in my life." Olivia stood still for a long moment, tears glistening in her eyes without falling. When she finally spoke, her voice was lower, more vulnerable. "You're engaged, Ethan. You're getting married in 2 months to a woman who clearly loves you enough to destroy other people for you." "I'm not marrying her." The certainty in his voice surprised her. "I can't marry someone capable of doing what she did to you, someone who attacks a mother through her own children. And more importantly, I can't marry someone who isn't you, Olivia. I can't pretend any more that I can be happy with someone else. That doesn't change what happened between us in the past." "It doesn't." Ethan nodded, squeezing her hands. "It doesn't change the fact that I disappointed you when you needed me most. It doesn't change the fact that you built an entire life, a family, a brilliant career without me. But perhaps we can build something new, on stronger foundations this time. Foundations based on honesty, courage, and true love." Olivia watched him for a long time, as if she were evaluating a complex architectural project, calculating structural risks and construction possibilities. "First, we're going to resolve this plagiarism issue and the smear campaign," she finally said. "After that, we'll talk about foundations." Ethan smiled for the first time in weeks, and it was a genuine smile, full of hope. "It's a start." They worked all night, side by side, like in the old days, gathering evidence, organizing documents chronologically, preparing an irrefutable legal defense. Ethan called the best lawyers he knew, while Olivia compiled every detail of the creative process for the project accused of plagiarism. "Look at this." She showed him a sequence of dated sketches. "Every stage of development is documented, from the first scribbles to the final project. I have photos of the process, testimonials from colleagues who oversaw the development, even the receipts for the materials I bought to make the models. Victoria underestimated you, Ethan said, admiring her meticulous organization. She thought she could take down someone who doesn't know the meaning of being unprofessional. By morning, with the first rays of sun entering the office windows, they had a plan. But there was something else Ethan needed to do, something he should have done 8 years ago. Olivia, I need to go confront my father. I need to tell him I'm no longer going to live my life based on fear of his disapproval. Are you sure? You know what that could mean? It could mean being disinherited, losing your position in the company, being rejected by your family. Ethan stood up, adjusting his wrinkled tie. But for the first time in my life, I have absolute certainty that it's worth the risk. What do you predict will happen when Ethan confronts his father? Will his family accept Olivia? Or will he have to sacrifice everything for his newfound purpose? Share your theories in the comments. The confrontation at the Blackwood family mansion was less dramatic than Ethan expected, but infinitely more revealing. "Father, I need to cancel the wedding," he announced, finding Anthony in his office, where so many family decisions had been made over the years. Anthony Blackwood looked up from the financial report he was reading, his reading glasses perched on the tip of his nose. "Cancel? 2 months before the ceremony? All the invitations have already been sent. The vendors hired." "Father, I found out who Victoria truly is, and I can't marry someone like that. She's destroying the reputation of an innocent woman out of pure jealousy. She's attacking a mother through her own children." "And who do you intend to replace her with?" Anthony asked, but there was something in his tone that suggested he already knew the answer. "Olivia Hayes, the architect." It wasn't a question, but a thoughtful affirmation. "That same girl you fell madly in love with 8 years ago. The same, only now she's no longer a girl without resources. She's one of the most respected and successful architects in the country. Rich by her own merit, talented, integral. And even if she were still poor, even if she were still that student without money for the bus fare, I would choose her. Because I love her, Father. I always loved her." Anthony stood still for a moment that seemed eternal, studying his son with the inscrutable expression he had perfected over decades of commanding businesses. "Are you willing to give up the family's approval for her? To risk your position in the company, your future in high society?" "If necessary, yes, because I've discovered that none of that is worth anything if I can't share it with the person I love." The older man carefully folded the report, took off his glasses, and cleaned the lenses with slow, deliberate movements. "Well, then you'd better know that I invited her to dinner here at home next Saturday." Ethan blinked, completely lost. "What? You invited her to dinner?" "I said I invited her to dinner. With her children, of course." Anthony smiled for the first time in months. "After I personally investigated her work, after I learned about her international awards, her social projects, the impeccable reputation she built, I realized that perhaps I misjudged the situation 8 years ago." Ethan gasped. "Olivia Hayes is exactly the kind of woman our family needs. Intelligent, determined, with solid principles, and enough morals to keep my stubborn son in check." Anthony stood up and walked to the window overlooking the garden. "Furthermore, I discovered that she was invited to lecture at Harvard for a semester, that her projects are being used as a reference in universities around the world, that she is, indisputably, one of the best architects not only in the country, but in Latin America. Father, just one thing, son." Anthony turned to look at him directly. "This time, don't be an idiot. A woman like her won't give you a third chance, and frankly, she shouldn't." Ethan was speechless, processing the fact that his father not only approved of Olivia, but genuinely admired her. "What changed your opinion about her?" "Nothing changed, Ethan. My opinion about the person she was already wrong 8 years ago. I judged by origin, not by character. By the bank account, not by potential. It was pure prejudice, and I'm ashamed of it." Anthony returned behind the desk. Olivia became exactly what I always said I wanted in a daughter-in-law. A strong, successful woman who wouldn't need our money and who would make my son a better person. The difference is that she achieved all that alone, without our help. In fact, despite our hindrance. The plagiarism complaint was dismissed in 2 weeks. As soon as Olivia presented all the documentation proving not only the originality of her work, but also the detailed chronology of each stage of the creative process. More than that, she managed to trace the true origin of the complaint through her lawyer, uncovering a network of influence that led directly to Victoria and her contacts in specialized media. Victoria, furious at seeing her plan spectacularly fail, attempted one last desperate move, spreading rumors about the twins' paternity through her social media and gossip press contacts. But this time, Ethan was on the right side of history. In a joint press conference that surprised the entire architectural and business community of London, he not only publicly defended Olivia's professional integrity, but also announced the definitive and brutal end of his engagement. "Olivia Hayes is one of the most integral and talented professionals I have ever met," he told the cameras, with Olivia by his side, maintaining a dignified and professional posture. "Any attempt to defame her is not only false and cowardly, but also criminal. We are initiating legal action against all persons involved in this smear campaign." "Mr. Blackwood," shouted a journalist from the back of the room, "is it true that you canceled your wedding because of architect Hayes?" "I canceled my wedding because I discovered that my ex-fiancée is a cruel and dishonest person, capable of attacking a working mother through her own children, out of pure jealousy and malice. As for architect Hayes, she is an extraordinary woman, whom I had the privilege of knowing, and who deserves all respect and admiration for the social project she develops, and for the dignified way she raised her children alone." Victoria lost several advertising contracts after the truth about her smear campaign came to light. Major brands canceled partnerships, her digital influencer agency terminated her contract, and her reputation on social media never fully recovered. What she had planned as Olivia's destruction became her own social ruin. But for Ethan and Olivia, that was just the beginning of a much more important and complex reconstruction. The dinner at the Blackwood mansion was initially tense, but transformative. James and Thomas were genuinely impressed with the size of the house, running through the gardens and asking a million questions about every architectural detail of the historic property. Anthony melted completely when the twins showed genuine interest in his art collections and his old engineering projects, explaining each piece with the patience of a passionate grandfather. "Oh, you're very intelligent," he told the children, as he examined the drawings they had brought as a gift. "You have a promising future in architecture or engineering or whatever you want to be. The important thing is that you have natural talent and a mother who encourages you to dream big." Olivia and Ethan observed the scene from across the room, a different tension floating between them. No longer the tension of conflict, but the tension of possibility, of reconstruction, of an uncertain but hopeful future. "Your father is surprising," she commented softly, watching Anthony help the children identify different types of marble in the old fireplace. "He can be a difficult and stubborn man, but he's not fundamentally bad." Ethan paused, then turned to face her fully. "Olivia, can I take you to a place tomorrow? It's very important to me. For us." "What place?" "You'll see." "Do you trust me?" The next day, on a golden, silent Saturday morning, Ethan took Olivia and the twins to Highgate Cemetery, where David was buried. Olivia was genuinely surprised and deeply moved when he stopped the car in front of the cemetery gates, immediately understanding the intention behind the gesture. "Why did we come here?" she asked, her voice choked with emotion. "Because before building anything new and lasting, we need to honor and respect what existed before. We need to make peace with the past." Ethan knelt to the children's height, who had brought flowers picked from Anthony's garden. "James, Thomas, I want to talk to you about your father, about David." The children approached with the natural seriousness they assume when they sense something important is happening. He was an extraordinary man, a father who loved you before you were born, who dreamed of you, who planned a beautiful future for the family, a husband who made your mother genuinely happy, who supported her in all her dreams, a respected professional, and a man of character. Ethan looked at the simple but well-maintained grave, where Olivia had planted rose bushes that bloomed all year. "I'm not here to replace him. No one can do that, and it would be wrong to try. He will always be your father, forever." "Then why are you here?" James asked, with the devastating frankness of children. "Because I love your mother. I've loved her for a very, very long time, and I've discovered that I love you two too, more than I imagined it was possible to love children who don't carry my blood." Ethan felt his voice falter, emotions overflowing. "If she allows me, if you accept me, I would very much like to be part of your family, not as a replacement for your father, but as someone else to love you, protect you, be present in your lives." Thomas looked thoughtfully at the grave, then at Ethan, then at his quietly crying mother. "Mommy, remember when you said our heart has infinite space to love, that it's not like a box that gets full?" Olivia nodded, too emotional to speak clearly. "Then I think there's also space for Uncle Ethan in our heart." The boy extended his small hand towards Ethan. "But do you promise you won't leave like Daddy David had to leave? Do you promise you'll stay forever?" "I promise," Ethan said, holding the boy's hand as if it were the most precious thing in the universe. "And I never, ever break an important promise." James also approached, more hesitant. "I can call you stepdad. You can call me whatever feels comfortable. How about Papa Ethan?" Thomas suggested after a few seconds of intense reflection. "That way, you're a dad too, but different from Daddy David who's in heaven." Olivia finally spoke, tears streaming freely down her face. "Are you absolutely sure, my loves? It's a very important decision." "We're sure, Mommy," the two replied in unison, with that unbreakable confidence children have when they know something is right. She looked at Ethan, who was kneeling on the cemetery's dirt ground, holding her son's hands, with tears in his eyes, and an expression of reverence she had never seen in him. "I love you, Olivia," he said, with complete simplicity. "I always loved you, even when I was too foolish to fight for it. And if you give me a chance, a single chance, I'll spend the rest of my life proving that I deserve all three of you." Olivia knelt too, forming a circle with them on the beaten earth, in front of the grave of the man who had been her first great love. "I love you too," she whispered, the words coming out as a confession and a promise at the same time. "Despite everything, despite the resentment and fear, I never completely stopped loving you." And there, in front of David's grave, with the silent blessing of a man who had loved Olivia enough to want her happiness even after death, and with the enthusiastic approval of two extraordinary children, they sealed a promise of a new beginning that seemed blessed by the universe itself. What did you think of Ethan's heartfelt confession at the cemetery? How do you feel about the children's acceptance? Share your emotions and thoughts in the comments. The months that followed were a period of careful and deliberate reconstruction. Ethan didn't try to rush or force intimacy. Instead, he earned his place in the family day by day, presence by presence, act of love by act of love. He showed up to take the children to school when Olivia had very early meetings. He stayed with them when she needed to travel for work. He helped with homework. He participated in parent-teacher meetings at school. He never missed a school play or a sports competition. Little by little, he became a constant and reliable presence, the kind of father James and Thomas had never had the chance to know. Present, active, interested in every detail of their lives. And with Olivia, he rebuilt their lost intimacy with an artisan's patience. They started with long dinners after the children went to sleep, talking about projects, about dreams, about the years they had lost. Gradually, they recovered their old complicity, but now deepened by maturity and experience. 6 months after their reunion at the cemetery, at the construction site of the educational complex they had designed together, Ethan chose the perfect place for the marriage proposal. It was a golden sunset. The children played among the concrete structures still under construction. Workers paused their tasks to observe the unfolding scene. "Olivia Hayes Miller," he said, kneeling on the still damp cement ground, his hands trembling slightly as he held a small velvet box. "Will you agree to build a life with me? A life with solid foundations this time, walls strong enough to withstand any storm, and enough space for all the love we have to give?" "I do," she replied, laughing and crying simultaneously. "But only if it's a joint project, in full collaboration, without impositions, without hierarchies. Partners in everything, forever. Partners in everything." He nodded, placing a ring that had belonged to his grandmother on her finger, a delicate but significant piece that symbolized not only commitment, but also full acceptance into the family. James and Thomas ran to hug them, shouting with joy, and the workers applauded and cheered congratulations. And for the first time in his entire life, Ethan felt he was exactly where he needed to be, doing exactly what he needed to do, with the people who truly mattered. The wedding took place 8 months later, in a simple but deeply emotional ceremony in the garden of the house they built together. A modern yet welcoming residence, with large windows that filled every room with natural light, a workshop where the children could draw their impossible houses, and a garden where Ethan had planted a rose bush in memory of David. Anthony Blackwood openly wept when Olivia called him Grandpa for the first time, and even more so when the twins presented him with the architectural design for a treehouse, specially designed for Grandpa to be closer to the clouds. The ceremony was officiated by the same priest who had married Olivia and David, symbolizing continuity, not substitution. During their vows, Olivia and Ethan spoke not only to each other, but also to James and Thomas. Promises that included not only marital love, but also a total commitment to being a united and indissoluble family. For their honeymoon in Bali, they took a family trip that included the children, because none of the adults could imagine complete happiness without them. James and Thomas built elaborate sandcastles, while their parents walked hand in hand along the beach, finally free to be completely themselves. One afternoon, as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Thomas ran towards them, carrying a large, perfect seashell. "Oh, Papa Ethan, I found a shell that sounds like the sea. Do you want to hear it?" And when Ethan brought the shell to his ear, pretending to listen to the distant ocean with an expression of admiration that made the children laugh, he knew he had finally found the sound he had been searching for all his life, the sound of being home, surrounded by genuine and unconditional love. 2 years after their reconciliation, when Olivia discovered she was pregnant, she told Ethan in the same way she had always dreamed of telling the first man she loved, by showing a carefully crafted architectural plan of a nursery attached to their bedroom. When he understood what the drawing meant and hugged her, crying tears of pure happiness, she knew that some love stories are like well-built buildings. They can collapse under pressure, but when rebuilt on solid foundations, they become stronger and more beautiful than ever. The pregnancy was embraced with joy by the entire family. James and Thomas were excited about the idea of having a little brother or sister, already making plans to teach the newcomer about architecture and engineering. Anthony commissioned a famous designer to create the most luxurious nursery in London, while Olivia, true to her nature, designed every detail herself to ensure the environment was both beautiful and luxurious. When little Sophia was born, named in honor of Olivia's grandmother, she was welcomed into a home already filled with laughter, creativity, and unconditional love. James and Thomas were incredibly kind and protective of their little sister, constantly showing her their drawings and explaining complicated architectural concepts that she would take years to understand. Years later, when all the children were older, James and Thomas had become teenagers, interested in following their parents' footsteps in architecture and engineering, while Sophia showed the first signs of artistic talent. They frequently asked how their parents had found each other again after so many years apart. Olivia and Ethan always told the same story of two people who needed to get completely lost to truly find each other, and who discovered that real love isn't about first chances, but about last chances that transform into first chances for a completely new and authentic life. On the wall of their main living room, in a simple but elegant frame, hung the first drawing James and Thomas made together after Ethan officially entered their lives. A family of 4, an architect mother, an engineer father, and 2 children with yellow hard hats, all holding hands in front of a house that seemed suspended in the clouds, but had the most solid foundations imaginable. Now, years later, that drawing includes a little girl with curly hair, representing Sophia, and sometimes special guest appearances by Anthony, eternally portrayed as a smiling grandfather surrounded by grandchildren who inherited his love for construction and creation. And every night before falling asleep, when Ethan walks through the rooms, checking on each child, listening to the soft breathing that confirms they are all safe and content, he remembers the journey that brought him to this moment of perfect contentment. He thinks of the scared young man who almost lost everything due to cowardice, of the years wasted in empty relationships, of the pain that both he and Olivia endured before finding their way back to each other. But mainly, he feels gratitude. Gratitude for Olivia's strength that allowed her to rebuild her life after his abandonment. Gratitude for David's love that gave her the confidence to love again. Gratitude for the open hearts of James and Thomas that had space for another father. Gratitude for his own father's eventual wisdom in recognizing that love and respect are more important than social expectations. And every morning, when he wakes up to the sound of children's laughter echoing through the halls of his home, when he sees Olivia at her drawing table working on projects that will help communities across the UK, when he realizes that he is living within a love story that seemed impossible, but became inevitable as soon as both people were brave enough to fight for it, Ethan knows that he is living proof that some foundations, when built with truth and commitment, can sustain a happiness that lasts a lifetime. The house they built together stands as more than just a residence. It is a testament to the power of second chances, to the beauty of blended families, to the triumph of love over fear, and to the possibility that sometimes, when people are brave enough to rebuild broken foundations, they can create something even more beautiful than they had originally imagined. And every night when the family gathers around the dinner table that Olivia designed and Ethan commissioned, surrounded by the laughter of children who know they are completely loved and protected, both parents remember the long journey that brought them to this moment of absolute contentment, and they know with the certainty that comes from having almost lost everything, that they will never again take for granted the miracle of being together. What part of Ethan and Olivia's journey resonated with you the most, and why? Share your thoughts on their incredible second chance at love and family.